My name is Marios Kremantzis. I'm a lecturer in Business Analytics and the Program Director of the MSc in Business Analytics at the University of Bristol Business School. It's a pleasure that I'm once again here this year presenting within the OR66 at Bangor University. It's my first time at Bangor. Many thanks to the organizers, like to Heather, who are here with us today. Thank you. I'm going to present to you a research work that has been collectively conducted along with great colleagues like Annika Neshian, who is going to present afterwards another paper as well, and also Antti Hondrogianni. Annika is from, we are actually with Annika from the University of Bristol Business School, and he is from the School of Economics of the same university. And in this research, in this pedagogical research, we aim to evaluate the effectiveness of AI chatbots, of these virtual assistants, towards providing successful student support and engagement in a UK higher education institution. So, I have provided a couple of introductory details, like for example that in the relevant literature the technological integration in teaching and learning has been of the utmost importance, and that the artificial intelligence is at the forefront of this technological integration. This is driving a paradigm shift in student interaction and educational support. As I did mention from the title of this paper, we are referring to the AI-driven chatbots, which are automated software tools that simulate conversational interactions between users and computers through a natural language by providing support in administrative tasks, things that are typically handled by professional members of staff within a university, and also to simple and even more complex academic tasks. Their integration into the higher education institution reflects a wider trend towards the digitalization in education, with a goal of enhancing the student experience and the intended learning outcomes. As per the research focus and objectives, previous research has extensively highlighted various dimensions of AI in education, considering the personalized learning environments, the administrative tasks, assessment, evaluation and feedback, as well as critical thinking skills, which is actually one of those aspects of a recent paper that we did publish with Annika and two other colleagues, in which we examined the impact of generative AI towards the UK Business School postgraduate taught students. There has been a limited number of studies on the impact of AI chatbots on the student engagement and support in the higher education. So our study investigates the impact of AI chatbots in increasing accessibility, not only to course-related, but to unit-related, but also to more generic university-related support, and by fostering student engagement in higher education. So, we expect to evaluate the performance of chatbots across two distinct settings. So the one is related to School of Economics students, and the other one is related to business school students within UK higher education, in order to offer rich insights. So the primary objectives of this research are to evaluate the effectiveness of chatbots in providing course-related support, and also support related to university activities, again to students that have already been registered in a higher education institution, and shed light on their perceptions about these kind of interactions that they receive from the AI chatbot. A couple of aspects in the next couple of slides on the literature review. So I start here with the AI chatbots that are virtual assistants. I did mention that earlier. These are a critical resource. They offer a wide range of of promising functionality, such as the 24/7 personalized support, and also the ability to customize learning experience to individual student needs. There are different kinds of benefits. I have just included a couple of these here: the personalized learning, the increased engagement, and the support for the diverse student needs. But of course, there is a number of challenges and limitations that we have identified in the relevant literature. So the impersonal, for example, nature of chatbots may fail to meet the diverse emotional needs of students. So sometimes they lack this empathetic response that human beings could potentially offer to students. On a paper by Han et al. Back in 2023, this paper argues that if we reduce the face-to-face interaction, that is something that could potentially undermine the critical social aspect of learning. So in our research, we are trying to, in a way, address this kind of concerns by exploring how the AI chatbots are implemented in such a way to complement and not to replace the human interaction, with a view to enhancing the student experiences. I'm referring here to the adaptive learning platforms and to the intelligent tutoring systems that could enhance the instructional content by catering to individual learning styles. And I think that the technological integration does not only promote the student engagement, but also other important values like the accessibility, the equity, by further strengthening students with diverse needs. Of course, as per the challenges in this technology integration, we are referring to the risk of the over-reliance on the technology that could be an obstacle in the development of critical thinking, cognitive and independent learning skills, as well as several other ethical considerations surrounding data privacy, algorithmic bias, learners' autonomy, social inequalities that must be carefully managed. I'm referring also to operational inefficiencies. So it's sometimes the compatibility of the chatbot that we develop, either by using a programming language or a chatbot provider. So how this chatbot, whether this chatbot is compatible to the educational supported platform that is being used by the respective universities. So at the University of Bristol we use Blackboard. So is it possible to integrate the chatbot that we have prepared to provide different kinds of support through the platform that the university uses? If not, then that's certainly an operational inefficiency. I'm referring to the biases in training data that could lead to potential discrimination against people of different race, gender, socioeconomic status, that could put under risk values such as equity and inclusivity. As per the acceptance and rate, the acceptance is something important to consider, not only by the faculty but also by the group of students who try to use this particular chatbot for getting different kinds of support. This may be influenced by the lack of trust, by the AI capabilities, by the empathy, by cybersecurity. Of course, teachers' acceptance could be, let's say, swayed by the perceived usefulness and by the ease of use. And in our study, we try to contribute to this discourse by surveying faculty and student groups to assess the acceptance level, and by providing training sessions to improve familiarity with the chatbot functionalities. Now, I'm moving to the methodology part, and let me start with the chatbot provider. So we have utilized the chatbot provider, specifically Landbot, that was able to offer templates, technical support and built-in integration to facilitate data synchronization. it was possible through this chatbot provider to get comprehensive metrics, including data on the user engagement and also flow analytics throughout the term. The chatbot was actually split into two types. So we're having a chatbot that was able to provide general support related to the university services. Like, for example, students would like to get ideas, information, useful concepts around the study skills, which is being offered by the university, around the health and well-being, the marks and the assessment process, about the personal tutoring systems, about the academic misconduct and other stuff. But also there was the other part of that chatbot was related to providing unit-related support. When I say unit, I mean the course-related support. So what if I want to find information about the teaching team? What if I want to find information about the formative and the summative assessments, about the mark, about the course discussion board, the learning resources of the specific week, anything related to the unit itself. The information were categorized into the general and the unit-specific content, and we tried in a way to avoid the manual updates by linking to university web pages in order to somehow reduce the inconsistencies. Some additional features that we included in this chatbot that we designed were the question answering function, that we're able to extract information from a predetermined document which was set to ensure accurate and much more relevant responses, and also some more domain-specific knowledge to avoid the AI hallucinations, which is one of the most common issues related to using chatbots and generative AI. Now, as per the target groups and the course selection, so in this experiment we focused on two student groups. The one are first-year undergraduate economics students. These were 191 undergraduates who are part of the School of Economics and who were attending the economic principles, the mandatory unit of economic principles. And the other group were MSc Business Analytics students within the business school, particularly 108 participants attending the modeling analytics, which is a 20 credit point mandatory unit in the same semester with the economic principles, which is about the foundations of prescriptive analytics. So in total, we were having 299 students from both groups. We intentionally selected these two types of groups of students because we realized that they are both, for different reasons, unaware of the university environment and processes. So on the one hand, the first-year students are students who have never been to a university. Okay, so they don't know about the independent study, they don't know about the formative and the summative assessment, they are not so familiar with the individual and the group written oral assessments. On the other hand, we have postgraduate students who, yes, they were having experience with the university, but most of them were international students. So they were coming from a different academic and cultural background. So several of the values which are part of the values of a UK higher education institution are not related to the values that they were involved as part of their previous university. Students were informed about the chatbot via first week lectures, weekly assignments, and the course discussion boards. At the end of the term, students were asked to fill in an online questionnaire. The questionnaire was available via the Microsoft form, and they were provided with some detailed explanations about the study scope. We tried to ensure that all students were aware that the participation was voluntary and completely anonymous. And the focus of the questionnaire was to investigate the familiarity of them with the chatbot, about their level of engagement with such tools, about if the available support matched the students' needs, and to identify any particular gaps. The collected data allowed us to examine the impact of these tools, the impact that these tools were having on student support and the student satisfaction, and as how they can be effectively adopted to meet the students' needs. As per the findings, I have here provided some chatbot metrics. So the available chatbot metrics provide some detailed insights into the user engagement, focusing on key metrics including total number of chats, the type of information sought, whether this was general or unit specific, and the completion rate. So you can see that of the 299 participants, 162 interacted successfully with the chatbot, resulting in more than 2,500 messages exchanged. Around 58% of them were sent by the chatbot, and 41% of them were sent by the students. 71% of the students sought unit-related support. They focused on aspects like, for example, formative and summative assessments, 25% in modeling analytics, 22% in economic principles, stuff around the learning resources, and of those participants who sought general related support, so support around the university, these were 29% of the students. They sought help by considering the question answering tools and the more generic study skill support. The majority of the chatbot interactions were deemed successful, but there is a discussion in our paper of this on the level we should be very cautious when it comes to this kind of results, and the kind of considerations. Questionnaire responses. So responses that were collected during the last 2 weeks of the autumn term. So 28% of the students responded to the questionnaire, and of those, around 40% had used the chatbot. You can see that 27% of the respondents didn't use the chatbot because they were completely unaware about its consistence, although we did try to ensure through multiple channels that this tool exists. I did mention earlier the first week lectures, weekly announcements, course discussion boards and others. And the second most common reason was the case that students were not were not really in a rush to use this particular tool. They felt like, okay, we know that this tool exists, but we don't really want to use it because we already have the instructor support. A few more outcomes. So all of the respondents agreed that chatbots were much more time efficient than other communication methods, and 91% agreed or partially agreed that chatbots help them address their queries, course-related or university-related queries. As per the satisfaction ratings, on a Likert scale from 1 to 5, the average rating in terms of chatbot usage experience was 4.18 out of 5, which is positive given the scale of the experiment and the constraints faced due to the copyrights. And here I have a few more things. So what we realized in this slide is that as AI becomes even more dominant, more prevalent, and students become increasingly connected to this kind of tools, we expect that these tools will become an essential addition to the support. And I refer here to 94% of the students who would welcome a wider adoption of the chatbots in the universities. As per the discussion, the study has explored the under-examined role of AI chatbots in enhancing student support systems by focusing on administrative and academic queries. They could provide timely, accessible, personalized support, offering a more engaging alternative to more, let's say, static, frequently asked question pages. They can foster a sense of connection, particularly for online learners, and the integration of chatbots with the course content and with assessment guidelines could enhance their effectiveness as navigational aids, improving access to essential information. The positive feedback highlights the potential for chatbots to scale as effective support tools in online education by aligning with recent research on their usefulness and the student satisfaction. I'm referring here to some key recommendations for effective chatbot implementation, like for example the case of integrating chatbots with course content and support services, or the case of adopting a blended model that combines the automated responses from the chatbot and the human intervention, especially when it comes to more complex queries, or the ongoing training that we should provide to students and staff to encourage the acceptance and the effective use of such tools, or the case of refining further, and for that we may need the help of computer scientists, the chatbot algorithms to reduce biases and to enhance the emotional intelligence. So this study explores the use of chatbots to support, as I mentioned earlier, two distinct groups of students, economics and business students within a particular higher education institution. The chatbot was implemented for 299 participants, providing general and unit-related support. 71% of the interactions were related to the course content, and 59% was the success rate in addressing queries. All students appreciated faster query resolution, and 74% of them reported increased engagement with their courses. In a way, I would say that these positive outcomes could suggest that chatbots can enhance educational resources, but should try to create a good balance between the human interaction with the automation of the AI-driven chatbots. Of course, there are key issues like the AI hallucinations, the looping, and the spread of incorrect information that must be carefully addressed to maintain student trust. And this study tried to tackle these kind of challenges by constructing a domain-specific knowledge base and by using a decision tree structure to guide responses, by preventing the incorrect answers, and by also preventing the some loops. Finally, institutions should view chatbots as part of a wider digital strategy. This may need further additional financial investment in technological infrastructure and in comprehensive training for both students and members of staff. And as per the future research directions, we could potentially investigate the impact of chatbot in minority underrepresented student groups, like for example mature students, to enhance the inclusivity, and explore other, even more advanced AI capabilities to include within the chatbot to design, such as the multilingual capabilities, to further increase its applicability in diverse educational landscapes. This is a sample of the references that we have considered as part of this slide. So thank you so much for your kind attention, and I would be very happy to take any questions if you have.
Thank you very much. Questions?
I've got a lot of questions.
Yes.
Okay. So, before my first question, I just want to know how long this chatbot was available to the students and how was it made accessible to them? Was it on Blackboard, or they had to go to a link together?
So it was. So the chatbot was available from the in the past academic year, in the first teaching block, particularly from teaching week 1 until the last teaching week. This is where we closed it, and then we start requesting feedback from them on the AI chatbot usage, on its effectiveness, and we did try to communicate that, as I did mention earlier, through multiple communication channels, so students were able to find this on Blackboard, in the educational supporting system of our university, in the unit specifically, in the unit page on Blackboard, in the very first page that someone was able to see on Blackboard when entering the unit, in weekly announcements, in the course discussion board, and of course there was communication by me specifically during the specific sessions about this tool, and that students should be able to use it to get this kind of support that I was explaining.
You did present in your slide a statistic that there were about 162 students who interacted with. That 162, is it the number of interactions by the chatbot or the number of students who interacted with? Because it's possible that somebody may have had repeat interaction. Were you able to trace instances of repeat interactions with the chatbot?
Yes, this is. So you mean that if I was able to see that the student did use that repetitively?
You did indicate. Okay, so the figure of 162 students out of the 299,
yeah,
was that information got from the chatbot or from the questionnaire?
From the chatbot.
Okay.
So we actually collected some data from the chatbot,
Okay.
and then also some data from the Microsoft form that students completed later.
So the 162, is it the number of times the chatbot was engaged or the number of students who engaged with it?
Yeah.
And also, were there repeat interactions and how? Yeah.
So I'm jumping because I was involved in that one. The 162 are the unique students. So each student has a unique ID. So 162 students actually use it across the term. It did show number of repeats. That is, it's the number of times students have engaged with it because it models it as a journey through the chatbot system. So we did see some of them go through engaging with the chatbots, but didn't get to the end of it, so they gave up basically later. So we can see that all of those metrics in detail within that chatbot.
Yes. Thank you for this presentation on the interesting study. I'm thinking about students' trust with this tool, because as you mentioned, each student has a unique ID. So if I am a student, I potentially might think, okay, my lecturer might be able to know who I am, how I use this tool. If I ask any, say, assignment solutions, my lecturer might know it as well. So that might detain me from using that. I might be happy to ask, say, when is the deadline on the assignment. I probably will switch to a general tool like ChatGPT if I want an answer for the question. So I'm thinking about whether you ask or collect any data about how students feel comfortable of using the tool and how they develop their trust with this tool.
We didn't. I'm not sure. I don't remember examining this, checking about their level of confidence. But you also mentioned that some students might want to find some more generic information and they might reach out to ChatGPT. Am I right? I think that you mentioned something like that. The thing is that it's not a good idea reaching out to the ChatGPT, especially when even for generic information that you want to take related to your university, because you can still get some very, very generic information that may be relevant for University X, but not for University Y. So that's why we tried, because we're expecting students to use it for getting some generic related support, even for the unit as well. That's why we tried to provide a lot of inputs to that chatbot. By linking that to university web pages, by linking that to the unit page on Blackboard, by linking that to specific things that exist that provide accurate and up-to-date information, so that students get proper answers, even to those very generic information, for which if they reach out to ChatGPT, they might get something completely inaccurate, let's say.
Okay, yeah. I think if they say you
Yeah.
using that tool compared to using the more general one, they probably will believe or feel more confident of the answers provided by the
Actually,
tutor.
you're actually taking us one step ahead, because we did test this concept of trust in the second paper that I will present now. So in another study, we've seen what you're saying, to say what makes the people trust, and what makes students use or avoid this technology. So, any
one more question?
Yeah.
You're talking about the success of this tool on student learning, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if you have analyzed if there is any correlation between engaging and non-engaging students and their average mark in the end. If there is any correlation you have analyzed, I would like to hear it. Happy to hear it. And the second question might be related to this. Have you ever considered comparing the average mark and first-time pass rate for these cohorts and the previous cohorts?
The average, sorry, can you repeat the last bit?
The average mark
Of this cohort that was...
of these cohorts and previous cohorts.
Of this cohort that was part of that experiment,
as
you mean?
well as the first-time pass rate, yeah.
So we have not done any of these two, so we haven't considered the correlation between the engagement and the mark, which I think this was the first part of your question, but this looks very interesting. So if I get this, perhaps those who were engaged with this might have been some students who might already have been students fully engaging with this specific unit, and this was just another type of support. I don't know, maybe the students who perhaps were weaker were not so fancy using this particular tool. I don't know, maybe this is my assumption.
Sorry to jump in, Marius. Not on this unit, but on another unit, I have tried this correlation you asked, and there's a positive correlation, 62%. But what's more interesting or most interesting is the shape of the correlation. So it's not a straight line, it's a hyperbolic line. So that means engagement reaps benefits up to a particular point where it sort of peaks, plateaus, if you get what I mean. So there is that engagement, or there is that correlation between task rates and engagement with chatbots.
You mean average mark or pass rate?
No, average mark.
Average mark.
Average mark.
So there is a significant statistic.
Positive significance.
Positive relationship between average mark and engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but the second part of the question, no, I haven't done.
No.
Not in this cohort.
Not in this.
Not in this cohort, not in this, but in another study I have done that.
Just to follow up, I don't see why we need a significant correlation between chatbot usage and average mark. I personally don't see a justification for it. Probably it may be more interesting to look at the students' satisfaction or students.
And also the benefits also might be in how much sort of time it saves the tutor, from having to answer repeated emails. So yeah, there might be more benefits, like I said, in looking at how much it saves time. Anyway, I think we've run out of time, so but I know there was one more question, so we'll briefly take that question now.
Okay, and I was wondering if there were any cases in which the chatbot signposted the student to further human support, or did the conversation end somewhere?
Yes. There were specific messages saying that, I don't remember specifically, but yes, this is the kind of support. If you don't need this, then how about this? If still this doesn't cover your question, then email the unit director or speak to this specific member, professional member of staff. But this was after exhausting, let's say, the kind of support that the chatbot was able to provide. We didn't want to say, from the first instance that please talk to the unit director. What's the point of having the chatbot to give this kind of support and alleviate the workload of other people?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marius. I'm presenting the second paper, and this, as you guessed, a follow-up to the previous paper, different cohorts. So obviously, with this study, we expanded our sample to cover all universities across the UK. It's a study that we've written up, obviously, myself, Joseph from Australia, Marius and Christian at King's College. We sought to look out to why basically our students choose to use AI. I think it was driven by, obviously, I don't know about everyone here is in higher education. There was a lot of usage of ChatGPT by students. It became obvious when you're marking and all of those kind of things. So we wanted to figure out what really makes students use generative AI technology in higher education. And even though we used sort of ChatGPT in this, I believe that the findings that we have can be spread across there's a lot of Gen AI technologies now, or offerings now coming up, which obviously these findings, I can argue, are relevant. So, always nice to start with a bit of statistics to show. This was from a Microsoft survey early this year. I'm sure if they tried that survey again now, that number will be higher than 62%. So 62% of students are using Gen AI tools in their academic activities. They sampled about maybe 200,000 students then and found that, okay? Some people have said that the insurgence of Gen AI is the same way the calculator was, thrown or expanded in the academia. Some see it as a printing press as well, where it has disruptive tendencies. There's still that mixed bag. Is it good? Is it bad? There's positive, there's negative of using AI. There's a big buzz of AI or Gen AI in higher education. So because of that, it becomes important to understand what drivers, what drives the adoption of this technology from a student perspective. And we argue that it's important for these two reasons. It has potential to improve learning outcomes, and it can help educators, it can help policy makers. Recently, the UK parliamentary has published, a position paper on AI in education. Obviously, studies of this nature, understanding why students adopt or what drives students to adopt these technologies can be used to inform this policy. What's in the existing literature is that key drivers of technology, broadly speaking, not just AI now, but technology in education, as you see on the right there, are perceived usefulness, ease of use, your typical technology acceptance model parameters. In the context of Gen AI, they've also seen some new findings or predictors, which are expected benefits, attitude towards technology, social influence, and some of these. So this is what actually is found in the literature. And Heather asked a very important question around trust. Obviously, when it comes to this kind of technology, trust is key. Trust is fundamental. Because obviously, based on the level of trust that the students have, it impacts or shapes their interaction with new and emerging technologies, just as that study found. Bringing it down to Gen AI, obviously trust is key because it hinges on student integrity. I don't know how many of us have, quote and unquote, accused students of using AI wrongly, because it hinges on perceived integrity. And clearly, the quality of information available does impact this perceived usefulness and reliability. So we found that there's many studies around this, but no one has actually tried to see what drives adoption of Gen AI and adoption in higher education. So we found that this is something that is key that it would be a very useful finding, because obviously that would answer that question that you were asking just recently, or just in the previous session, to say, have you thought about if they trust it and they would be engaged to use it, then obviously that would be a good way to look at it. So we approached it now from a different perspective that is different to your typical TAM or technology acceptance model or UTA/UT. So those models basically look at perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, usefulness, and those types of things. But we argue that adoption goes beyond those simple parameters. So we put those three parameters, which are from the theory called perceived information quality, PIQ. It's quite an old model. So we use those parameters there to see the box there in the middle of or towards the left of that diagram replaces the typical TAM model that you have. So we replace this with credibility, reliability, and importance, okay, or relevance. And we use this to develop a model that would replace the TAM to predict basically the behavioral intention and actual use of AI. Okay, so that our study aim was to explore the relationship between PIQ, so perceived information quality, and intention to adopt, and actual usage. So that's a research question there on the right. Just a brief of the literature. Obviously, Marius has already mentioned this. I'm going to run through this part because obviously we all are interested. There's a broad and growing literature, our volume of literature around AI and generative AI in higher education. But from a PIQ or technology or trust standpoint, because I'm sure you agree with me that trust is a very key and vital element within technology and adoption. Now, PIQ has been tested in various other sectors. So like I said, it's not a new theory, it's an existing theory. Many people have used it before. Information systems, social media, it's been used across the literature, but it's just not been tried within higher education. And what it's defined as is a user's perception of information being accurate, being relevant, and being timely. Okay, so trustworthiness. So it also covers this concept of trust. It's been shown to be a determinant of technology acceptance because obviously it impacts the trust and perceived usefulness. So we were looking at it from the standpoint of this might be able to answer our question and also answer the call for practical strategies to improve PIQ and technology adoption. So within our model, like I described in the previous slide with the research model, we tried to consider elements of credibility, reliability, and importance or relevance. We saw this as key elements of PIQ that we included in our study. We developed this hypothesis, which obviously is there on the screen for you to look at. We took away traditional TAM variables, like I said, and replaced it with these PIQ variables of accuracy, timeliness, and relevance, and try to see what are the findings. Okay. Again, simple quantitative study, single data collection instrument, a survey, a questionnaire designed using Microsoft Forms, collected demographic data, shared across PGT students in the UK. We assessed this PIQ through composite variables or measures around credibility, around frequency, so asking simple questions like how well do you, or strongly agree, strongly disagree to strongly agree, I find so information reliable, how frequently do you engage, all of these single questions that we asked. Obviously trustworthiness was rated from simple Likert scale. Behavioral intentions, I intend to use AI in my education, from strongly disagree to strongly agree again. And again, actual use was gauged by your previous experience, so how have you used AI previously? Data collection, so we received 522 responses, obviously, which exceeds what is the minimum requirement of 375. There was a diverse representation across all faculty levels, across all study levels, and exposure to AI. The demographic details are then an almost balanced gender distribution. There was a majority of UG students participating in our study, and mostly from business and management programs. So, just to run through the findings, because I'm very conscious that we're now getting towards where we are in need of running out of time. Our findings simply show that PIQ, as it's written there, significantly influences students' behavioral intentions to use AI technology, in this case Gen AI. So the summary of that finding is that the higher the PIQ, the higher the intention to use AI. Okay? On the other hand, going deeper, remember that we had 3 legs to our PIQ. So we had relevance, we had importance, and frequency. So what we found is that frequency, so how frequent students engage with this technology, was the mediator of this relationship. Okay? So that was the second step of our indirect effects model, where we found that obviously credibility and importance showed significant, but frequency showed a very complex finding, obviously, which shows the implications on the right. So what that means is, if you improve the credibility and the importance of AI-related information, then obviously you get students to use it more often. So basically, if they trust it, then obviously they will use it more. In terms of reliability, there was a not significant mediation, which shows frequency, credibility, and importance are not equally impacting the need to use AI. Then we decided, because obviously, like I said, frequency was showing a different complex relationship, to split into 2 groups to see what impact it has, frequency of use has on intention to use. And we saw that the students that have what we call information overload, so that means frequently engaging with this technology, had higher behavioral intentions to use than those who had lower information overload. So what that shows basically is that we should have a balanced approach. I've listened to other sessions where there's a lot of talk around AI, around how we can integrate AI within higher education. We believe that these findings might be useful to, for example, using AI for assessment, using AI for chatbots, for example, adopting a balanced approach to information dissemination about this tool, can help you to maximize benefits and also minimize the negative effects of information overload. Okay, so brief summary of what we've done and what we found there is, like I said, we wanted to see how PIQ, so perceived information quality, impacted behavioral intention and actual use. And we saw higher PIQ, specifically credibility and importance, resulted in higher intention and actual usage. The behavioral intention is a crucial mediator in the relationship between PIQ and actual usage. So in other words, to foster a positive intention can result in bridging this gap between perceived and actual use of technology. The takeaway from this study is to adopt a balanced approach, not to provide information overload in terms of information dissemination for Gen AI and Gen AI technologies. Obviously, trying to have this balanced approach in terms of quality and frequency, which would have a more positive outcome. In terms of limitation, obviously we've seen that excessive content can boost intention to use. In terms of limitation, we used a cross-sectional design, obviously, and again, that does have its limitation because obviously you can't infer causality from that. So obviously it's only finding associations within it. You can't say what is causing what, so that will need a deeper study to show. Also, it's also important to see, maybe to explore how, instead of information quality, so maybe misinformation, so the reverse of it can inform what it does in terms of users' behavior, intention to use, and actual usage. So, in terms of future study and what would be the next steps, maybe expanding the study across the beyond the UK, because obviously all of the data collection was done in the UK, so that might skew the findings. And we only tested in terms of question, in terms of ChatGPT, as a technology. So the focus was on ChatGPT, but with the growing abundance now of AI and generative AI tools around, it might be useful to expand across that board, because we don't know how generalizable the findings that we've had are. That's as much, or that's what I had to present to you. Obviously, this is a study that we've done. We're still looking forward to your feedback. Obviously, that would be helpful to improve the quality of the work. Okay. Thank you very much. Questions? Yeah.
Did you do any sort of segmentation with the students? So, for example, students studying in particular courses or types of courses were more likely to use the technology?
No, we didn't do that. Only, and not because we didn't have the data to do it, but because we had, I would say, too many groups of students.
Right.
From various disciplines. So we were surveying students from various disciplines: business and management, education and law. So we had these maybe 10 or 11 groups of students. So segmenting obviously would dilute the effect we thought. So we didn't look at it from that way. But if we were to maybe group students into segments, maybe the most feasible way, which obviously I'll take as feedback, is to maybe group according to UG and PG, something along those lines. But yeah, that's something that we can consider. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Two questions. The first one is, I'm still thinking, what is the major difference between the credibility and the reliability? So, would you give me maybe 2 examples of what each is?
Yeah.
And the other, in my comment, I think the information quality is, of course, very, very important. I'm also thinking the students' personal experience of using, say, relevant technology of their own experience might affect their trust with the tool as well.
So the personal experience of the student and its impact on trust, right?
Yes.
In the technology.
So
Yeah.
it might intertwine with the information quality.
Yeah, obviously, and that's a risk of every research. There will be some element of subjectivity, which we can't take away, and of course that's what makes research more interesting. Now, your first question is around reliability and credibility. Obviously, when it comes to reliability, that means how reliable is this information? If you ask the same question, for example, 100 times, how reliable is the answer that you will get, okay? And in terms of credibility, how, as the name implies, how credible it is. It's difficult to define the difference between the two. But how credible, how trustworthy, that's where that element of trust comes in, specifically within this, how much do you trust the information that you get from AI, basically, okay? And all of these, like I said, keep in mind, were composite variables. So we had different questions that we combined together to form these variables, okay? Because obviously we had to reduce, it was something like 25 points. We had 25 questions in that questionnaire, so we had to sort of group them into credibility, reliability, and relevance, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Anika. First of all, you did say you use stratified random sampling. And I'm just curious about the strata and what was the motivation for that?
I mean, obviously, it's a case of saying we are trying to focus it to students, in this case, within the UK. We're not streamlining it to say we want to collect data from only students in a business school, for example. But we want to focus on students that are currently registered within a UK institution.
but this is stratified.
Yeah.
So it means that there are different groups of students
Yeah.
with known proportions,
Yeah.
which you want to replicate in your sample.
Yeah, I mean, we started out, and obviously, like I said, this is part of a broader study that we're looking at. We looked at, for example, number of students globally, and tried to compute, the minimum possible number of students that we would have, or we should have, and that gave us, I think, 375. So we set our targets at that number to get that number of students across all the institutions within the UK, in this case, unfortunately, and then group them now within their disciplines. So to say, which discipline are you, business and management, or engineering, or technology, and so on and so forth.
And your claim about random, your claim about random sampling, how was that achieved?
I mean, obviously, we randomly sent out the questionnaire samples across a broad range of students. I think we advertised it to many
Groups of
students, institutions across different universities, different countries as well. But we had responses within the UK as well.
I think you should look at whether that is random sampling. I'm not particularly sure if that constitutes random sampling. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But for the framework, the conceptual framework,
Yeah.
You made a claim of mediating effect if you can show the conceptual framework. Yeah. So the impact of credibility, reliability, and importance on behavioral intention.
Yeah.
Did they change with the exclusion of frequency as a variable?
Yes, and that's why we say we had a complex relationship when it came to frequency. And that led to our finding this mediating, or this partial effect, to see what impact frequency had on behavioral intention and actual usage. And that's where we had this concept of information overload, to say the more you overload people with information, then it impacted their behavioral and actual intention to use the technology in itself. So yes, it did change, where the findings changed differently when frequency was taken out.
Yeah, and I think it answers Heather's question partially, because frequency has to do with familiarity with the tool.
Yeah.
So I think.
But yes, it does answer a question, and that's the interesting finding with it, that it's not just about the frequency, but it's also, let's say an element, or the element of the quality. So it's one thing to be frequently engaging with something, but for example, credibility, reliability, and importance of the findings are not really, putting it all together. So the frequency also had an impact, in addition to these other 3 variables on the left, which are PIQ, which combine together to be PIQ. Yeah. Thank you very much for that very interesting comment. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.